Hello, my name is Rashida Rogers, and today I'll be talking to you about the power of language in ESL students. This project is for Social Work 630, and it's focusing on the Rural Legislative Advocacy Project. So getting right into it, let's talk about the introduction. So why English language learners are important. So English language learners are really progressing in the United States today. There's about 5 million English language learners in the United States. So you break it down a little bit more than that, there's about 1 out of every 10 students are English language learners. So that may be 40 to 50 students or hundreds of students that are in your school right now who need that understanding of how to really learn English. And unfortunately, 90% of the ELLs that are in schools are not receiving the support that they need. And I say this because they're coming from a different country and they have that barrier, the language barrier that they're not familiar with, and they have to kind of learn to adjust to that. So how do we work with those students? Well, according to Title III of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, it's part of legislation enacted to ensure that English learners, including immigrant children and youth, develop English proficiency and meet the same academic content and academic achievement standards that other children are required to meet. So it's great that they kind of understand the importance of how ELLs are really growing and how they should also receive the same resources that are available to other students because they're deserving of that as well. So let's talk about the overview and the history of ELL. So ELLs have been progressing, like I said previously, but they also face a lot of dual challenges. Unfortunately, they are learning a new language, one, so how do you face that challenge while you're also trying to keep up with the content of the classroom? A lot of the times, educators are also facing challenges as well. A lot of the educators are not necessarily trained to really work with this population. They're trained to teach the content. They're not trained to help a student overcome those barriers, language barriers, cultural barriers, whatever it may be, to really kind of overcome themselves and be confident enough to learn the content and then kind of pass it along to your future aspirations and your careers and goals and all the above. So because of these repeated history, these things that are happening, a lot of ELLs fall behind in their peers' relationships and also fall behind in the skills necessary that they need to graduate and to also have future careers as well. But fortunately, there are some great stakeholders and there are some great acts that have been implemented to really ensure that our students are being taught properly. One that we're familiar with is No Child Left Behind, which was enacted in 2002, working with ELLs. And this really focused on the correlation of what we said with EA, which was the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. So they kind of correlated a little bit, and they focus on language instruction for limited English proficient and immigrant students. And they wanted to continue this approach so that there will be funding of programs for many different school districts when it comes to working with English language learners and bilingual education. So those who have been promoting this, another act is the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, and this also supports this population because it focuses on developing the data, the assessment, kind of measuring how ELLs are really working in the classroom. And there really weren't many opposers to this. I would just say there's a lot of individuals who may be uneducated on this topic. And I say this because we are still consistently implementing this idea of the ESL pullout, which means that a lot of our students are in the classroom with their peers, and they're learning with those who are different than them, but they're getting pulled out of that classroom to a separate classroom where all English language learners are put into, and they're all learning together. So I'd see it as, yeah, it's good that you have these students who are here and they're learning something together, but you're taking them away from their other peers who also need to help them learn the culture and learn how to engage properly with the environment that they're in. And so what I want to implement, social analysis process of this, is recognizing the problem of this and how we can move forward. So I'm focusing more on a local level in Kentucky specifically. So the problem is that we're taking students out of the classroom. We need to engage both. We need to include a dual language immersion program. And unfortunately, there's only 2 existing language immersion programs in Kentucky. There's one in Fayetteville County Public Schools and another in Jefferson County Public Schools. And this is just the research that I've done so far that I've kind of found, but it was very hard to kind of look and see what other resources that were out there for ESL students when it was really limited in Kentucky. And so, it's important to recognize this in Kentucky specifically because Kentucky is a hybrid state. And what this means is they're experiencing both high ELLs, density, and significant growth in the ELL numbers. So this population is growing. We need to keep up with what they're doing. In 2014, Kentucky has 3.0 to less than 6.0% of students who were in school learning English and secondary language programs. So if you kind of put that into perspective, that's not a lot of students who are in these programs when they need to be. So when it comes to implementing these problems that we might face, maybe really understanding the underrepresented group here and understanding, what they need to really grow. Also understanding who our allies are, who is in support of this. And I think it's not necessarily our allies, but also who can we educate on this, because it's not really advertised much about ELL students. And so how do we make sure that we are teaching our peers and teaching our professionals that this population is growing? It's important to address this issue. So some theories that social workers can apply when working with ELL students, because we know that school social workers engage with students from all different backgrounds on a consistent basis. So how do us as social workers apply, our knowledge with working with a diverse population and apply it to the children we're working with? So recognize that the acquisitionist model is important for children who are ELL students. These children acquire language without constructing their own understanding or rules without receiving explicit construction. So this model really focuses on I relate it to the social learning theory. They work with their peers and they learn best from kind of the modeling behavior of what's going on with them. Another theory or kind of method that is used is the inter-language hypothesis. And this refers to separatedness of secondary language learner system that has structurally intermediate status between the native and target language. So the way that I kind of understood this was that students make their own connections to better understand. So they're kind of relating it to their own culture. Their own culture has taught them a certain method that they kind of go about. So how can you use what they've been taught and apply it to what they need to be taught so that they can learn? So that's how kind of those students kind of understand that. Also, the social interactionist method, and this is where the learner discovers the meaning potential of language by participating in communication. And so I love this one because it really talks, I see it as the student challenging themselves to participate in unfamiliar settings. So they're really putting themselves in an uncomfortable situation, which I think helps them grow even more. This might be in conversations when you're talking with a student. This might be when you're playing a game, things like that. You're putting yourself out there, and at the end of the day, you're receiving information that you didn't learn or know before. Also, the social cultural model, and this is where students from a non-mainstream culture are acquiring a second culture, language, which may contrast between the patterns acquired at home. So this is difficult. You're learning a different language, and a lot of the things that you're learning is contrasting with what you're familiar with. But this happens everywhere. So I see it as those external sources. Maybe it's at home. I'm sorry, not at home. Maybe it's at school. Maybe it's in the media, things that are unfamiliar with you that you're kind of learning from as well. So let's focus on the economic analysis aspect of this. So being bilingual is not only a benefit to the individual, but it benefits the community, benefits the nation, and benefits the economy. So bilingual adults are likely to graduate. They are likely to go to graduate high school, graduate college, and more likely to get a job as well. And that's because they're so skilled, and they have different skills that they can use. They're learning and they're transferring to work with individuals that they're engaging with. And so I wanted to kind of give you an understanding of how important it is. And I used Utah's dual language initiative program that they implemented. It's been really great because the reason that they did it at first was to really focus on their students. And when they implemented the program, it was actually they were going through a economic hardship, but they were focusing on the future of Utah. So they said that we're going to have a generation of kids to come that will really put Utah on the map, and they'll bring businesses here because it's really about our future economic survival. They also said that Utah's goal is a critical issue nationwide. It's an interconnected and rapidly changing world. Many believe that America's prosperity and economic strength depends on students mastering a language other than English. And I find that so encouraging because it's true. A lot of our students need to learn another language, not necessarily those who are coming from a different country, but also those who are in this country because it benefits them for their future aspirations as well. And it's been really great because what I want to focus on necessarily is population of Kentucky. We have a lot of Hispanic students, but Utah really focuses on all different languages. They focused on Chinese, French, German, Portuguese, Russian, and Spanish. And it's been really great because their advantages have been excelling the maps, and I think that we should also continue to do so as well. So now the political analysis of this. So the U.S. Department of Education, Office of English Language Acquisition, which is also OELA, which I will refer to, provides national leadership to help ensure that English language learners, immigrant students are English proficient and achieving academic success. So they provide opportunities for bilingual and multicultural skills for students. They're really focusing on making sure that the students from starting off in elementary school, leading on to high school, and leading on to even college are graduating. So we want that retention rate to go up and to excel as well. And they accomplish this by national leadership, informing policy decisions, administrating grants and programs to ensure that, a lot of this population may be underrepresented, which means, they may not have the resources they need to succeed. So providing them with programs and grant scholarships so that they can use. Also investing in research to, further understand how we can benefit the populations that are generations that will be coming in as well. And also, like I said, kind of expanding on their research and practices and policies, making sure that they are acquiring the English language acquisition and proficiency that they need. So policy evaluation. So it's kind of hard to understand what we want to, how we want to evaluate what's going on right now when there's not really much that's there to evaluate on. And so what I kind of focused on was the desired outcomes and goals that we have for this program. And so I want to focus on the scores and the state local assessments. So really understanding of how it may not only benefit ELL students, but it'll benefit other students to kind of increase their testing scores so that they can excel and use that for the future. Also working on their grades and their content courses, working on retention in their grades. So if they're starting off in 3rd grade throughout the year, we want to make sure that they move on next year to 4th grade and that they're not falling behind. Graduation and dropout rates are important to recognize. Participation in extracurricular activities. Are they involved in maybe sports? Are they involved in the after-school program that really helps them to really, continue to challenge their language growth? Enrollment rates, mobility and attendance rates, participation in extracurricular activities, like I said, suspension rates, career readiness, things like that. So how this will affect the cost effectiveness of the local state would be districts they have to provide a lot of resources for these students. Knowing that they're learning a lot, we need to make sure that they retain the information. And to do so, you need to spend money. A lot of that is educational technology, libraries, laboratories, relevant resources that support ELLs when it comes to like multicultural resources, making sure the academic content is the right level for the right grade, and also making sure that the native language is correlating to kind of what's being taught with them. So consequences that these students might face. Students may plan, ELL's plan includes a timely means. So it's time consuming for these students to really excel. And so a lot of time that gets put into it. It needs to be both between the student and the district and the teacher, the parents. It's an investment to put into these students to really make sure that they're succeeding. So I think the biggest consequence would definitely be the time and the effort and maybe spending money, but at the end of the day, the money will benefit the district in the long run. And so the proposal that I have is to implement dual language immersion programs. And I think from this that all students will develop a high level of proficiency and fluency in their first language. Also, students will develop a high level of proficiency in their second language. All students will perform and achieve academically in all core content areas according to district and state guidelines. And all students will demonstrate positive cross-cultural attitudes, inspire self-efficiency, and strengthen positive attitudes and behaviors among their students and families in the community. So it won't only benefit the community, but it benefits the student themselves. You know, they feel more connected with their environment, their peers, their community, and they don't lose who they are, their social identity as well. It definitely relates to the NASW policy statements because it focuses on ethics and values. You know, they hold on to those values. We want to make sure that they keep those values and continue to develop those. Also focuses on interventions in schools, making sure that social workers understand how evidence-informed practices can be used in their intervention process. Decision making and practice evaluation schools, you know, making sure that we're using this practice and we're expanding on our services to make sure that it helps students succeed. Cultural competence in schools, really understanding the differences of all different cultures that are in the school and how we can make sure we relate to each particular student so that they feel special, they feel unique, and they feel like they're being provided for. And then lastly, advocacy, school social workers. So really making sure we're advocating for our students, that we know that they know that it's important for us to see growth in them as well. So right now talking about the bilingual brain and kind of the importance of that. So if you guys want to read this for a second, it just talks about how just the bilingual brain is just so really, it's amazing. There's so many different components to it that really it'll help the student for their future, like I said, with their career choices and things like that. So now for my SMART goals, S being specific, making sure that, you know, ELL students and families in the communities are really engaging and they're understanding the basic needs of what is needed for these students to be successful. Measurable, building rapport with the districts and the community. As if I was going to implement this program, I would want to do so by December 2018 and share with the districts and the community the power of the language and how important it is. Achievable goal is to collaborate effectively with teachers and support staff and ensuring ELL students and families receive the opportunities and resources that they need to be successful. Relevant, promoting cultural awareness to cultivate an appreciation of diversity by educating myself and also educating the peers and the partners that we're working with. And lastly, time-oriented, knowing that implementing this program will take time. It's making sure that I achieve this goal by, let's say, September 2021, because I think it'll put enough time for me to build a rapport with my districts and enough time for me to kind of develop my plan and kind of work towards a desired goal to get that running by the academic school year in a couple years. And so my action plan a little bit further, just a little bit more in depth, is to 1, communicate with school districts, 2, educate on the importance of language and how to remove barriers, and lastly is just advocating for our students to embrace their own culture and to hold on to their social identity. So that was a lot that I explained on today, but I really do believe that if we focus on our students and focus on our clients to understand that they have differences we need to address and we need to advocate for, I think that this step is a really great step in the right direction to ensure that they have professional success, student success overall in their careers. So thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. Bye.